Imagine you're surveying 75 extremely stressed out college students. You really want to understand their stress levels, but here's the catch. You have absolutely no idea what the exact shape of the overall population's stress distribution looks like. So how in the world can we possibly predict their average stress level without knowing the underlying data? This isn't just some hypothetical textbook scenario, it's a real-life statistical roadblock. You might be sitting there thinking, man, do I need to go out and survey thousands more people just to get a clear picture? Well, actually, scratch that. You don't. You just need the ultimate statistical tool, the Central Limit Theorem. Let's dive right in. By the end of this explainer, you're going to know exactly when to use the Central Limit Theorem, or CLT for short. We'll cover the distinct formulas for calculating means versus sums, walk through step-by-step calculations with real-world examples, and most importantly, we're going to uncover a very common mistake that traps a ton of students. All right, let's get started. Okay, so right off the bat, you've got two main paths here, which is why it is absolutely crucial to read your problem carefully. If you're being asked to find the probability or percentile of a sample mean, you use the CLT for the mean. Make sense? But if your problem is asking for the probability or percentile of a sum or a total, you got to use the CLT for sums. They require slightly different mathematical setups, which we're going to practice in just a minute. Now, looking at this, you might be wondering, wait a second, what if the word problem doesn't even mention a sample size? What if I literally just want to find the probability of one single individual value? Stop right there. This is so important. Do not use the Central Limit Theorem. Seriously, this is the single most common mistake you have to avoid. The Central Limit Theorem applies to samples. If you're looking at an individual data point, you must use the specific distribution of that random variable, whether it's normal, uniform, exponential, whatever. Never, ever apply the CLT to an individual. So before we jump into the math, let's talk about why the Central Limit Theorem actually works. It's totally grounded in the law of large numbers. This law basically says that as you take samples of a larger and larger size from any population, your sample mean gets closer and closer to the actual population mean. And as that sample size gets bigger, not only does the standard deviation shrink, but the distribution of those sample means takes on this highly predictable bell shape. It makes it an incredibly accurate reflection of the true center. All right, example 1, solving for the mean using our college students' stress scores. Let's make this super concrete with those stressed out college students from earlier.
The real trick here is just extracting the right numbers from the word problem. Step 1, we identify our sample size. That's 75 students. The problem tells us the stress scores follow a uniform distribution from 1 to 5. Step 2, using our uniform distribution formulas, we find the population mean is exactly 3 and the standard deviation is about 1.15. Okay, now for step 3. We want to find the probability that the mean stress score for these 75 students is less than 2. Because we're asking for a mean from a sample, we set up our normal distribution using the CLT. Our mean stays at 3, but our new standard deviation is 1.15 divided by the square root of 75.
And when we run those numbers through a normal distribution calculator to find the probability of the average score being less than 2, the answer is practically 0. I mean, it is almost mathematically impossible for a sample of 75 students to have an average stress score that low when the true average is 3. Let's stick with this sample, but let's flip the question. What if we want to find the 90th percentile for the mean of those 75 stress scores? We define a variable, let's call it k, where the probability that the mean is less than k equals 0.90. Instead of finding an area, we already have the area and we need the score. So we use the inverse normal function on our calculators, which basically works backward from a probability to find a score. We just plug in our 0.90 area, our mean of 3, and our adjusted standard deviation of 1.15 over the square root of 75. And boom, the result is 3.2. This brilliantly illustrates what percentiles actually mean in this context. It means 90% of all possible sample means of 75 stress scores will be at most 3.2. Only 10% of sample groups are going to average higher than that. Now that we've got a handle on means, let's move to example 2. Solving for the sum. We're totaling the stress. When you're calculating for a total, your parameters change a bit. Step 1, to find the mean of the sum, we just multiply our sample size of 75 by the population mean of 3. That gives us 225. Simple enough, right? Step 2, to find the standard deviation of the sum, instead of dividing, we multiply the square root of our sample size, 75, by the original standard deviation of 1.15. This gives us a nice even 10. Finally, step 3. We want to find the probability that the total combined stress score of all 75 students is less than 200. Using our normal distribution calculator with our brand new sum parameters, we get 0.0062. That tells us there is less than a 1% chance, roughly 0.6% actually, that the total combined stress score of 75 random students will be under 200. Let's bring this into the real world. Part 3, real-life analogy, cell phone minutes. Imagine a cell phone company is studying customers who exceed their basic contract time limit. The excess time follows an exponential distribution with a mean of 22 minutes. Now think back to our golden rule. We have to treat samples and individuals completely differently. On the left here, we have a sample of 80 customers who exceed their limits, but on the right, we just have one randomly selected individual customer. So what happens if we want to know the probability that their excess time is longer than 20 minutes? Look really closely at this table, because this is literally the exact kind of trick question you are going to see on an exam. Because we have a sample of 80, we use the Central Limit Theorem and the normal distribution. That calculation shows a 79% chance that the sample's average is over 20 minutes. But for the single individual, no way, we cannot use the CLT. We have to use the exponential distribution formula, which gives us just a 40% probability. This perfectly illustrates exactly why reading the question to see if it's a sample or an individual is your most important step. All right, final section, part 4, historical hack, the normal approximation to the binomial. Before modern computers, calculating binomial probabilities for massive sample sizes was an absolute nightmare. The Central Limit Theorem provided this incredible shortcut, allowing us to use the normal distribution to approximate the binomial distribution. But you can't just use this hack whenever you feel like it. There are strict rules. You need a specific number of independent trials, and the outcomes have to be strictly success or failure. But most importantly, the number of trials multiplied by the probability of success, which we call NP, must be greater than 5. The exact same goes for failures, NQ, which also has to be greater than 5. If all of those check out, you're good to use the normal distribution, but you absolutely must apply a 0.5 continuity correction factor. This just slightly widens our net to account for turning whole numbers into a smooth, continuous curve. Let's see this in action. Say a district surveys 300 people, and historical data tells us 53% favor a charter school. Step 1 is our setup. Our trials, N, are 300. Our probability, P, is 0.53. Step 2, we verify. So NP is 159, and NQ is 141. Both are well over 5, so we are clear to use the normal approximation. Our mean is 159. Step 3 is where the trick happens. We want the probability that at least 150 favor the school. To apply that 0.5 continuity correction factor to make sure we include 150, we actually start our normal calculation slightly wider, from 149.5. Crunch those approximated numbers and we get 0.8641. So there is an 86.4% chance that at least 150 people in that survey of 300 will favor the charter school. And the best part? We did all of that without having to manually calculate 150 different complex binomial formulas. All right, let's wrap this up. Here are your main takeaways. The Central Limit Theorem is your absolute go-to tool for finding probabilities of sample means and sample sums. Always remember the golden rule. Never, ever use the CLT for an individual data point. And if you're using it to approximate a binomial outcome, you have to verify that both NP and NQ are strictly greater than 5. Before we go, let me leave you with this final thought. We've learned that taking a large enough sample guarantees that our calculations will perfectly approach the true population mean. But what happens to the Central Limit Theorem if the original sample you selected was completely biased from the very start? Will the math still save you, or are your results totally doomed? Think about that, and I'll see you in the next explainer.